and welcome to another episode of the Bleeding Metal podcast. My name is Pia, my pronouns are she, her, and I have a very special guest from Canada today. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Draven. I am from Vancouver, BC. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be here.
I'm also happy that you're here. We wanted to meet a couple of days ago in Hanover originally, but unfortunately I got sick and so I couldn't come there because you were on a trip through almost every city of Germany. No, but you visited a lot, a lot of Germany to also visit some concerts. And I saw that, I think it was Venues who shared your story. And I just wanted to follow you on the journey and also said, well, when I come to Hanover to the concert, we maybe can meet and have a drink or whatever. But that's also the first thing that I want to talk with you about. How was your trip? I want to know everything.
Oh, awesome. When it came to the trip, I would say going into this time zone was so rough because well, coming from Vancouver, we're like on the farthest side of Canada that you can possibly get. Like we're talking ocean. So it's like to go from there all the way there, it was a lot of traveling. Like to get there was like 18-ish hours. And yeah,
Oh.
we basically came just for concerts. That was the whole purpose of the trip. And so when we booked this trip, like it was actually like it was a 3-week in advance sort of thing. Like it was not super planned.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wanted to hit the Transients tour since they announced the tour because I saw it's their first headlining tour, and given that Venues is my main inspiration for music, they are the reason I'm doing this in the first place. I was like, well, I want to go support something like that. So it was kind of like we're going to choose either between going to a festival in 2025 or going to this. We chose going to this. But yeah, the trip itself, it was really good. It was equally the most exhausting yet best entire life. We saw venues in, what was it, Leipzig, Hanover, and Hamburg. And there was a few other shows we saw too, which was Parasite Inc. in Bamberg. And then it was the Pagan Fest tour in Berlin. So it was a lot of traveling in a 2-week span.
And you kind of traveled a circle, right? From Leipzig or Dresden, Leipzig, and then north of Germany, and then back to the eastern part.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess in my opinion, it was nice that it was more straightforward because it was just going in one direction and then going back that way versus what we had kind of like thought of doing was we were thinking of going to is it Cologne? I have no idea how you pronounce it. We're gonna do that, but then we're like, yeah, it makes no sense to do that.
To go back there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. So that's very cool that you did that, because even in Germany, Venues is not a very famous band. You just said that was their first headliner tour. And I saw them on many festivals. And when you're listening to metalcore, then of course you have heard of them. And they're not playing the headliner slots, but when it is going to be dark. So they're not a very small band, but even not a very big band. So how did you get to know them?
So that's actually a really good question. What I know was that I was listening. I can't remember who I was listening to on Spotify. This was a few years back, but they came into like the recommendation from when Spotify just will start playing random stuff. And when I first heard of them, I think the first song I heard was like the epilogue, and I was like, "Oh, I really like this."
Oh yes, I love that. Yeah,
such a good song. And throughout the next few months, just slowly, Spotify would just show me more and more songs. But it wasn't until it showed me Wida Galley. Wida Galley was like, when I heard that song, I don't know what it was about it. I really don't know how to describe it to this day, but it did something to my brain. And I was like, this is one of the best songs I've ever heard in my whole life. So I listened to it on repeat for like a month straight. And then I found Cravings. And when I heard Cravings, I was like, oh my God, like, what is this band? These guys are like one of the best bands I've heard. And I don't even know how long. It's been years since I've loved a band this much. That started I guess it was like a snowball effect. And I just started getting more and more into their music. And before I knew it, I was listening to all their albums. And I was like, yeah, this is also the first band where I've ever I've loved every single song they've put out. And normally with albums, I'm kind of like, this one's okay. I don't like this song. Or like, oh yeah, this song's good. But this is like, I love everything.
I can relate to that because that's something that also happens to me. When I find a band that really does something to me, then I become kind of obsessive. Not in a creepy way, I hope, but I want to listen to every song and watch every interview and everything. I dive into a kind of rabbit hole then, and then I can't listen to anything else within weeks.
See, you get it. You get it.
Yeah. And you also hit the stage with them.
I did. That was probably the most surreal moment of my entire life, to be honest. But yeah, I ended up going on stage with them twice. It was in the Hanover and the Hamburg dates, and how that kind of came to be was I wanted to tell them this before the show began in on the Leipzig date, but I was like a little bit starstruck and also really shy, so I was like, I don't really know what to say on the first day, and in my mind, I was like, I really want to tell them that they're the reason that I started doing music, why I finally picked up vocal lessons and stuck with it. Because for pretty much my entire life, ever since I was 6, I dreamt of doing vocals, and I was just always too afraid to. I've done some courses, but then I just never stuck with it. And Venues is the reason I stuck with it because, and it was White Galley was the first song that when I tried singing it, actually, I couldn't sing it at all because my coach told me, okay, like this is in chest voice, and I'm an alto, so she's like, okay, try doing this song. And when I tried, I couldn't hit the notes properly. I'd go too high, too low, and it was like just because my chest voice range didn't go like that high at the point, I couldn't do it. So I was like, okay, but I really want to learn this because they inspire me so much. It took a couple months where I was just like butchering it in my bathroom. It sounded horrible. My poor boyfriend had to listen to that for 2 months. And eventually I did get Why the Galley. And I was like, I really want to tell them that. Like, I want to tell them that, I started doing this because of them. I couldn't do this song. Now I can. And just kind of tell them how much their music means to me. So after the show, I finally built up like the courage to tell somebody. I didn't know who yet, but I was like, I'm going to tell somebody about this. And I was like, my boyfriend, you know what? I need to tell them today. And then he was like, well, why don't we do it tomorrow? And I was like, because tomorrow I'm not going to have the guts to do it. So we waited around after the show for a while, and I think it was Daniela and it was Valentine that were kind of just like standing outside. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see whoever's done what they're doing first. And it ended up being Daniela. And she comes up to me and she's like, oh, we're going to see you tomorrow, right? And I was like, yeah, but there's something I wanted to tell you first because I don't remember exactly what I said, but I told her that I wrote it down on my notes app on my phone because I was like, okay, I'm really shy. I don't want to like screw this up. So I wrote it down and I read it out to her, and I'll read you what I said. It's still in my notes app.
I guess it'll be there forever. Never deleted.
Right? It'll be there for eternity. I wrote this out first because sometimes I am shy and fuck up all my words. I wanted to tell you guys that your music means a lot to me. It touches my soul, and I have loved everything you've put out. Your music was the only thing that was able to inspire me to finally push past my fears and start my own journey as a musician. I always gave up before I started, and this is the first time in my life I've stuck to it. I learned Why the Galley, a few screaming parts, and the singing parts. When I first tried to sing it, I sounded like absolute shit, and now I can finally do it. After I said that to her, she's like, oh, so then I can point the microphone at you and you can sing a part of a chorus with us. Like, which parts of the song do you know? And I was so at that point, I was like, hell yeah. Like, I literally said to her, hell yeah. And the was funny because like when I actually have like really crippling stage fright. So for me to agree to something like that was very out of character, but it was such a dream come true. And yeah, so she told me that she'd point the microphone at me during a chorus part, and I was like thinking to myself, is this like really happening right now? And also, what's going to happen? And also, I can't believe I just agreed to this. Because yeah, it was stage fright. and just fear in general has been such a crippling thing for me as like a vocalist and musician. And so to be kind of like in that situation, I was like incredibly honored, but also I was shitting myself. I was like, oh my god, like I was scared.
I can imagine jumping on stage in a different country in front of so many people and then performing a song that you just learned to perform, to sing. That's awesome. That is so cool.
Oh, it definitely was scary because I actually only got it down like 3 weeks before that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like we just learned it.
Yeah. But it must also mean a lot to them, because I interviewed a lot of musicians and they sometimes say, well, it's weird. Sometimes you think people don't care at all and stuff like that. And then someone comes to you and says, well, you inspired me so much that I finally started a musical journey. It must mean the world to them as well. So it's always cool to tell them what that means to you when this is the case with you.
I can definitely imagine that it would mean a lot to them too. Let's just put it this way. They were like worth traveling for from the other side of the world. So it's I really do think that they deserve the best. They deserve all the love and just like positive, like that positive reinforcement I feel is a good thing too.
But I also want to know more about your journey. First of all, how's your impression of Germany and the German metalcore scene?
Oh, right. So I would say Germany was a pretty big culture shock all around.
Okay.
So I guess like just in like with the whole trip, I would say something I really noticed is like the staring. The staring was very intense for me in a lot of places. Like, back in Canada, like people will stare in Vancouver sometimes. In other places, you don't really look at someone longer than a second. And if you do, everyone just kind of goes like, does this awkward smile, like, but in Germany, yeah, a lot of people were staring. So I wasn't used to that. So that was a big culture shock because it was like that, like you're just staring into your soul and you're like, okay, awkward Canadian smile time. And they just keep staring. The people though, the metalcore scene in general, people were so nice. In Vancouver, it's very like cliquey over here, so people don't really talk to you that much. But in Germany, everyone was talking to us at every single show we went to, and people were very friendly, very welcoming. Mm-hmm. They seemed very interested in the fact that there's people all the way from Canada over here. Yeah, I really liked it. I got a really good impression of like just the people, the scene. I would love to go back. I would say something that I also wasn't prepared for was the party culture of Germany.
Okay.
I have never seen anything so crazy in my whole goddamn life. That was something. Well, it was more so like after the show one time, we got taken to this thing called a Schlager party. To this day, I don't really know what that is.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so just the type of things that people do, I guess like it's just crazy.
But that's the most insane thing that you can do in Germany, going to a Schlager party. People
really?
freak out completely, yes.
That's so funny. I had no idea because like we were told what it was and I was like, okay, like I don't know what this means, but yeah, sure, whatever. I'm trying to think. And yeah, but as far as the metalcore scene goes too, like what really stood out to me is just how supportive everybody was of venues at all the shows we've attended throughout, like what we were there for, or just seeing on social media. The type of love that people have been giving to them, you don't really see that out here. Like out here, I feel like you get people being crazy, mosh pit, crowd surfing. You don't have people like blowing up 100 balloons and like bouncing them around, like baking them like a member's birthday cake. You don't have them like, making the bands like, little like flags that say their names. Like it's like, if it's like that out here, then I haven't seen it before. But having gone to hundreds of shows out here, I want to say the love and support is a different level out in Germany that I saw. And I loved that. And like, I truly think that they deserve that type of love too. Like, don't get me wrong. Like in North America, people are like supportive, and you got like you got people who love the bands, but it's just a different vibe. Like, and I don't know how to describe it other than out in Germany, it feels more wholesome. And the other thing I really like about Germany, you don't have to fight for your life to be at the front. that's a very big thing in North America. Like you have constant crowd crush of people not from moshing, but rather because they want your spot. So they will use
Hmm.
the force of the mosh pit to try to force you out of it, and they'll be like elbowing you and like body slamming. And like every time I've gone to any concert in Germany, it's never been like that. Like you can go towards the front and people will just move over, and
Hmm.
it's nice not being afraid for your life because people are crushing the crap out of you.
Yes. No, over here, people are also very polite in mosh pits and circle pits. So whenever someone falls, then they help the person to get up. Or I even saw someone, the shoe opened and he had to close, I don't know what it's called, but he had to rearrange his shoe. And people made a big wall around him so that he could do that. It was very funny.
That's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that.
I think we have a very big metal culture here also because of the Wacken festival, because they have a big media coverage. So for Germans, it might be easy to get in touch with metal, and also because of the structure of the country. So when you look at Germany, the country is not that big, but we have, I think, 80 million people. So if you compare that to Canada, you would say Germany might be a crowded place. But
That's wow.
that also means a lot of bands and also many local scenes.
That's actually amazing. Yeah, I would say that yeah, for the amount of people and the size of the country, yeah, it might seem a little bit crowded, but I feel like just being in Vancouver, which is like the best way to describe it, it's like a small city that just expanded, and now there's too many people here.
Wow, okay.
It didn't feel as overcrowded as it can over here, I'd say. The Wacken Festival, I definitely think that, yeah, I can see that being a very like influential thing for the metal
Mm.
culture out there too. All of the best festivals are in Europe. I don't care what anyone says.
Yes, that's also something that I wanted to ask you about. So you already said how the metal scene in Canada, or how the people in the metal scene are and behave. But I would also like to know how it is in general for bands also to tour there, because I looked at the map, and as you just said, Vancouver is on the far right, on the far left part of the country, and all the other cities like Quebec, Toronto, and so on, they are on the other side. And it's a very, very big country. And my co-hosts Kiki and Susanna, they had the conversation about Latin America, and even Brazil is such a big country. Susanna comes from Brazil, and she said when bands come, they usually play two cities, and it's very difficult for the fans from other parts of the country to go there because they would need to go by plane, and that's very expensive for them. And so I'm interested in how it is in Canada. Do you have a lot of bands coming to Canada to play there? Is it difficult in Vancouver because they only go to the other side, or do you even have to travel to the US to see a lot of bands? So how is that?
So I would say, as far as for like Canada as a whole, we're kind of in a similar boat where it's very rare that cities other than Toronto, Montreal, sometimes Vancouver will get shows. I think it's because Canada is so wide, and when you really think about it, other major cities in the US aren't, super convenient to get to the other cities that are in the in between. A lot of people don't go there. I think that like there used to be a lot more people that came to Vancouver, but I've been noticing that in the more recent years, like a bunch of artists will come like at once, and then it's just kind of like a dead period. And we
Mhm.
we do tend to go to like the States sometimes for shows, but the issue with that is the States. Like if you look at like American currency, for example, versus Canadian currency, it ends up being a pretty expensive trip unless you're just going straight there and back. But
Mhm.
yeah, we do have to travel for, I would say, shows like sometimes, but yeah, sometimes we also just get lucky in Vancouver. In my hometown, we never got anybody. I'm from originally from Winnipeg, and that's the middle of nowhere. And we only ever made it because sometimes, we're on the way to like Minneapolis or something like that.
And is the metal scene somehow connected to the US metal scene?
I would say if there's anything that's connected, it'd probably be like Vancouver and Seattle, just because it's only like a few hours away. So we get people who are from Seattle and vice versa a lot. Like when we went to Electric Callboy, in Seattle, the whole front row was from Vancouver or Vancouver Island. But I would say that, yeah, they're somewhat connected, but more people definitely go to Seattle, like less so Vancouver.
And do you have a big festival in Vancouver or somewhere else in Canada?
So if we're talking about like big festivals, like, the ones that are on the level of ones in Europe or even in the States, I wouldn't say we have something that's quite like that. We do have like some more local festivals like Hyperspace, Glacial Mutilation. There's a few other ones around the country too. I know there's like I think it's called like Loud as Hell, and then there's another one that I can't think of off the top of my head, but they're smaller in comparison to like what you're looking at something like Aftershock or like Incarceration, whatever the heck is in the States. There's so many in the States.
And how about the local scene? Do you have a lot of newcomer bands or smaller bands who play local shows?
I would say we have a pretty large local scene. There's a lot of local bands that play. I would say as far as for like specifics in the local scene, I don't think there's like as much like metalcore, for example, out here, or just like not that I've been able to find at least, but it's kind of like a mixed bag.
How about I won't say the idols, but maybe the inspiration? Do you listen to a lot of European bands, or is it more the US American scene? Because I know there is a very big metalcore scene with, for example, We Came as Romans, also in the USA, or August Burns Red and all these bands. But they give me a different vibe than the European bands. So what would you say? Do people get more inspiration from the US metal and metalcore, or from Europe, or from where do you get your inspiration?
So for myself, I would say pretty much all my inspiration is Europe. Because you're 100% correct. The vibes with whether it's metalcore or even just metal in general, the sound is so different in my opinion. I listen to mostly like metalcore and melodic death metal, and everything that I just kind of listen to comes from that side of the world. And then people out here, I think out of the people I've spoken to who are like in the music scene, there's a lot of people who draw inspiration from more like North American bands. And then like, of course there's also that those people that they like some of the European ones as well. But yeah, I think in terms of inspirations, yep, it's all Europe for me.
It's interesting because when I started listening to metal, I only listened to Finnish metal bands, to bands from Finland. I don't know why, they just had something in their sound that kind of connected with me. And then later I discovered all the German metal bands as well.
Oh, that's awesome, because like I love Finnish metal too. I don't know what it is about the Finnish metal bands either, but it's like their sound and their like their skills is at a completely different world. Like there's so many great bands that come from there, and you hear like, even for example when it comes to vocals, it's just like there's certain vocal styles I hear and I'm like, oh, these guys like have a crazy range, a crazy sound. Where are they from? It's like Finland or somewhere nearby.
So please tell us something about your band and your musical journey, because you said you started singing, and I think you also joined a band or started a band.
All right. So so when it comes to the singing journey, I've been like singing since as long as I could talk. I did quit for a few years when I was a teenager just because of life issues. And I started training, like professional training, like in, what was it, February and then April for Screams. And after the venues experience, I actually had someone reach out to me and be like, "Hey, do you want to start a band?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. Like, what are you thinking?" Metalcore. And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah, let's do it." So yeah, venues is actually going to be one of the inspirations for that band. For me, it's my only main inspiration. But yeah, so we just started on that one. I've come up with a name, and we're just kind of in the process of figuring out, like, I guess like all the people. We're going to do a jam in the very near future. And then I have another band as well. This one, we're still in like we're just in the writing process right now. So we're getting some stuff made to kind of send to people to try to find members. And that one is going to be more of a symphonic, like mellow death vibes, like a sort of band. So think like, Dimmu Borgir, like I don't know how to say this band's name. So I think it's like if Hanover. I have no idea. But they're another inspiration. Like Fear Factory. So there's a couple projects in the making right now. So while we're in the writing phase, basically just my whole plan right now is just to focus as hard on vocals as I can. We've definitely made like, leaps and bounds with it, but by the time that we're like in the recording process, I want to make sure that, we got this.
Are you still on social media so that people can find your bands?
So the metalcore band does have a social media. Instagram is @endofanaera_official. So it is completely blank right now, but there will be updates on that in the near future. And the other band, which is we're called Defiant Intent. That's the symphonic melodeath one. That one, we don't have one quite yet, but we will be making one very soon.
Speaking about social media, where can people find you?
My Instagram is Polluted Soul. Like it is, I guess, little quick fun fact behind that username is just 2 words from a Children of Bodom song, one of the best melodeath bands.
Yes.
Yeah, so my Instagram's Polluted Soul, and then I have like a Facebook page where I just post band photography. It's called Draven.
That was also something that I was wondering about you. You took a lot of pictures also on the concerts that you visited. And are you also writing for a magazine or something?
So I do work with a local company called Support the Scenes. So this one is a Vancouver-based company, and they focus on like live coverage, reviews, like interviews, bringing awareness to the local scene around Vancouver. So in Vancouver, I'll do a lot of stuff with them. Sometimes I'll just go and do my own thing. And I just started photography like pretty recently, so I'm looking also at kind of just making like my own branding around that as well. Yeah, so it's a little bit of everything, I guess.
Yeah, cool. When you're reaching out to Instagram right now to to follow Draven and her bands on Instagram, you can find the podcast at Bleeding Metal Pod. We drop stuff on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook, but we're mostly active on Instagram. You can find me at power_Pia. I'm very happy that that you had the time to record this episode with me. Is there anything else that you want to say to the people out there?
Thank you guys for listening to me ramble, because that's just what I tend to do. I don't know how to shut up sometimes. So you made it this far. Thank you so much for listening. And it was a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for listening, and bye-bye.